Welcome to the Live Intentional podcast. Here we will explore stories, ideas, and questions from our life with the hope to ignite you to live according to your values and beliefs.
On this podcast, we will share our visions from our past, present, and future.
Our hope is by us sharing our story, we can inspire you to live more intentional and make you think about new ways to get creative in your relationships.
We hope you will follow us on this journey. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intentional Living Podcast. This week we're going to talk about transitioning from dating and being engaged to being married and living together. So if you're in the season of dating and engagement, this is for you.
Yeah, and we hope last week's episode gave you a little bit of insight on how we reset during New Year's, and hopefully, you guys kind of created something for yourself to have a plan of attack for this new year. So for us, we didn't live together before we got married. So even though we were traveling and going on trips together, and we also lived a little bit kind of together in college, we didn't fully live together until we got married, which came with its own new adventure and obstacles as well.
So we'll just go back to when we moved in. We didn't move in until we returned from our honeymoon. Luckily, when we were away for our honeymoon, my now in-laws had moved in all of Steven's stuff, which was really nice. So when we came back, we were able to spend our first night in our place together. And then the next day I went and packed up all of my belongings and everything.
And that was kind of our first obstacle, because I actually worked for part of the day while you and your parents packed up all your stuff and started moving it in. And then I came home and helped.
It was the hottest day of the summer.
Yeah, it was very hot, and going in the truck was really hot to get stuff out and bring it in. It was like a hot box in there.
Yeah, so then I just spent that week really unpacking everything and getting everything all settled in its place.
We ate pizza on the floor with no table, no couch, and just surrounded in boxes, which was really cool.
Yeah, fun memories.
Yeah, it was nice that my parents got all of my stuff really in and set up, so that way, we had a place to sleep. And we didn't really have to worry about my stuff, so we really just focused on getting your stuff in. Some of my stuff wasn't unpacked yet, but we focused more on getting your stuff unpacked and making this home a house, or this house a home.
Yeah.
So being married and living together is a new adventure in itself, and with adventure comes excitement, but it also comes with its own obstacles. And we just wanted to kind of take this time to talk about some of those obstacles that we dealt with and kind of how we overcame them. So some of the exciting things that we went through were not having to travel to each other's houses and having a home base, which is really probably the most exciting part of moving in together.
Yeah.
Because, you spend every day with each other now, and you don't have to drive to the other person's house or, ask your parents if you can have a sleepover. And now we just have our home base here where, even in the beginning where, our schedules were conflicted, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We had somewhere at the end of the day to meet up and, kind of see each other in passing in the beginning more, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, I feel like that was definitely the nicest part, because when we were engaged, I was working full-time at that point. You were finishing school, and I was working full-time at that point. So it became a little difficult to travel back and forth and pack up things if I was going to stay overnight. It just added in.
And you work overnight, so you would work at night. When I was off of school, you would have to get ready for work and go into work. And then when you got home, you slept most of the day, because you got home at 7 a.m. and you slept until 3 or 4. And then I was still in school, so I had some night classes. So it was very difficult when we first got engaged to kind of match our schedules up.
Yeah, and just the extra travel, I feel added stress.
Yeah, but it was nice, because sometimes when you were off, you'd drive with me up to Rowan and hang out at Rowan. And when I had 3-hour classes, it was cool because you were so dedicated to me that you would just spend the time at Barnes and Noble and hang out. And
yeah, just read books.
Yeah.
Let's see. Another exciting thing was we could, once we moved in together, was creating a routine together. So the obstacle would be, once we moved in, we still kind of had conflicting schedules. But the exciting part was that on our days off, we were able to create a nice little routine together.
Right, yeah. And creating a routine is really helpful when you have conflicting schedules, I feel because it kind of makes you prioritize spending time together. And, when you don't have, out of the 7 days of the week, you're working 3 days, sleeping maybe a day and a half or a day, it doesn't really match up like that. So having that routine and, having a plan for our days off and wanting to spend the time together is really nice, and it really helped us grow closer together, I feel like, in the beginning of our marriage.
Yeah, the routine definitely helps because at first, I feel like my routine was really poor at first when we moved in together. I stuck with the same routine I had when I lived at home. So, like didn't have to cook. I like cleaned my room, but like didn't have to like take care of the whole house. So I really like focuses on working, and then I kind of, since I work night shift, I used to stay up really late and then like sleep pretty late even on my days off, and I kind of carried that through to when we moved in together at first.
I never thought of that until now. You did.
I changed that, and it's been a while, so I feel like we don't really remember it as much, but I had a poor schedule in the beginning. I would stay up until like 3. You'd be asleep for work. I'd stay up in the living room until like 3-4 a.m. watching TV shows or something, and then I would sleep in still until like 12 the next day, which wasn't beneficial once you're living together and like having to take care of a home, because I felt like my day was getting started so late. It just wasn't productive. So I changed that. Now my days all, like, I go to bed at a normal time. We actually go to sleep at the same time together, which is also really nice to fall asleep together.
And now you even say like, oh, if I'm up past this time, I get into that night routine.
I get like a second wind.
You
and
kind
can't
of
fall
just
asleep.
lived on that night routine when we first got married, which was really probably not good. You know?
Which I like feel like I didn't notice at first because, like I said, living at home, I don't think I took as much notice to it because like you were in school, so if you worked too, but like days you were off, we kind of stayed up late together. And we didn't like, you didn't carry that through once we moved in, but I did, and I was like, oh, like we're never going to sleep together, even on my days off. And then you're getting up early, I'm staying asleep. It just like wasn't a good routine. So I changed that, and the way our routine is now, I feel like works much better.
And we always had that like kind of hang out later because of school, and I would basically like I would go up there maybe 3-4 days of the week, but I would cram my classes into one day or those days, so that way I had night classes, so when I got back from school it was already late, and that was our time to hang out. But that was so tired from school and stuff that day that I would fall asleep, you would be up, and our schedules just didn't really match up then in the beginning, really. And then another exciting thing, our last exciting thing that we put down, there's plenty, but decorating the home to make it, feel more homey and make it feel like yours. That was really cool. I mean, you made this place, yours. I got this office, obviously, but the rest of the house was basically yours. And, I have no complaints on the way that you did it. You made it feel very feng shui and very relaxing. So it's nice to come home from work and, come in here and just feel like, this is ours,
Added like our own pictures and everything of us, and made it feel comfortable. It took us a little while to like we did little steps at a time, but then now
I feel like we kind of worked with what we had at first, and then we would see things and kind of be like, oh, this goes with our aesthetic, let's get this and that, so we kind of built on it, and now I feel like we're kind of stagnant on how it is. We got a new TV, but that doesn't really add to the aesthetic. It just helps us when we watch our movies and stuff. But
I think it's nice the way it is now.
I enjoy it. And even for the holidays, even being able to decorate for the holidays and stuff is really cool and fun to do together.
So we can move to some of the obstacles. We kind of like already talked about this a little bit, but having different work schedules. So
it was very bad in the beginning.
It was just hard to get used to since you were on a normal Monday through Friday,
so I graduated that the year we got married. I graduated May, we got married in July. So I didn't have school per se, but our work schedules were just like, it was bad at some points.
Because if I was working like multiple shifts in a row, strictly night shift, 12-hour shifts, if I would leave for work, you usually weren't home yet. And then I would usually get home in the morning after you had already left for work. So we would go a few days, I feel like, without seeing each other. That was really hard. And,
like, dinner was cooked, and I had to sit there and eat by myself and shower. And it was kind of a mess. But some ways that we kind of got through that and conquered that was something that you mentioned, that we used to leave each other notes.
Yeah, I found a picture the other day, actually. I was just like scrolling through my photos, and I found a picture I had taken that you like left a note on the pillow. And we used to leave notes on, we have like a whiteboard on
in the
kitchen.
Fridge. Yeah, we used to leave little notes. So, when I came home from work, it was like, kind of like she was still there with me, leaving me something, to kind of encourage me to have a good night. And then when I would wake up, I would have to go into work, but she wouldn't be home yet, so I left one on her pillow. And we would do little things like that to kind of make it easier on ourselves, to feel like, this is just a phase in our life, a season in our life where, our schedules aren't matching up, but things will change and it'll get better.
Especially
then,
because it was like the newlywed phase. So I
Yeah.
feel like, you want to see each
Which was
other
really
all the
sad,
time.
yeah.
And our schedules were like so opposite.
Yeah, and we were hustling. We just made sure that we made the most of our days off together
Yeah.
during that time too. So, like I play video games and I like to go to the gym and do stuff, but on those days where we both were off, I made sure that we just dedicated that day to us. And whether it's a relaxing day and we would watch movies or hang out together in the house, or we would do something outside like hiking or going somewhere, we just made sure that we made the most of the days off.
Yeah, or even like prioritizing like having dinner together, like having a nice breakfast if we were both off on the weekend
Right.
together.
Yeah, and just doing something that we both enjoy, like going to the beach or something, made those days off a lot better. And then we were like, all right, we got to get back into our routine of going to work and not seeing each other. So that was probably, what do you think, like the first year and a half was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I eventually got better
20,
hours
like
when
year
I
and
was
a
at the
half.
bank. Probably after a little bit, they were giving me some time where I, kind of talked them into like, oh, you work this day, and I would like to get off to see you and stuff.
We did
yeah.
try to. You did eventually like kind of have your schedule just like match a little bit better with my off days, because that's
Yeah.
the other thing. Some of your off days I was working, so
Yeah.
you were like home the whole day
Home,
by yourself,
Or you were sleeping, waking up, I'd see
Yeah.
you for 2 hours, and then you'd go into work.
Yeah.
But another one would be just kind of getting into those house roles and chores, like, especially in the beginning, I felt like we just had to kind of pick each other's slack up because, if you worked multiple days in a row, like I would help cook dinner for you, or, I would do the dishes when you left. I would take out the trash, and then like on days where you had the time, you would cook dinner. So we kind of made sure that we picked up on where the other person was kind of not to say they were lacking it, but they just didn't have the time to do that,
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like this one's like for everyone, getting used to each other's like little quirks.
Well, for everyone who hasn't lived with a significant other, or anybody in that matter, whether it's a roommate or not, there's kind of things that you find out throughout the way, which we were dating for so long, we probably knew most of what we were getting into moving in together. Did you really have any quirks with me when?
I don't know, not really. I think it's just things that like since we were living together that like
You
happen
notice?
daily instead of just like when we would like stay
Right.
at each other's houses.
You ever
notice
like
it.
fall
It
in the
was more...
toilet for me leaving
yeah,
the seat up?
leaving the seat
No,
up.
you've never fallen in.
No, I never fallen.
No, I mean, one thing I was nervous of is like when you lived at home. I know it's partially because you were working a lot and stuff, but the room, man, that room used to have clothes everywhere, and that's one thing I was worried about. We make it kind of,
I think we were like outgrowing our spaces too, though, because we
Yeah.
were older since we didn't
Right.
move in together before we were married, and we waited until we were married to
Yeah.
move in. We were also older, so we were just like
Outgrowing the
outgrowing our
space.
rooms.
Yeah, and you were like a clothesaholic back then, bought like everything that was cute that you saw. So
Yeah, and hoarded stuff. I had
Yes.
like clothing back from like early high school.
yeah, I
still.
kind of made you get out of that, and we would do like just the time to like go through. Like I always say, like if I didn't wear it in the last year, am I gonna wear it? Is the question I always ask myself when I do that.
Yeah.
So that I know that kind of rubbed off on you a little bit, and I would do that
Yeah, I
with
do
you
better with
as
that
well.
now. I feel like I
Yeah.
try to do it every few months, go through like drawers and everything.
Usually seasons, I would do like winter season. I do the summer stuff. Spring, I would do the winter stuff. Like, did I wear it this winter? Would I wear it next winter? Or does this have a purpose of why it's still in my closet?
Yeah. Every now and again, though, I get rid of something that I didn't wear in those few months, and then something happens, and
I
I'm
just
like,
did that
oh
with the
man, I
hiking
really should have
pants.
kept
Yeah,
it.
I did that with my hiking pants, and I'm like, I should have kept them for winter because they're good to like shovel snow or take Red on a walk with.
Yeah. All right. So let's do from like some perspective. So from your perspective, what was the biggest transition for when we moved in, I guess?
So I would say that moving out and being handed the adult responsibilities, was kind of something that I was mentally prepared for, but didn't know everything that came along with it. Like, the yard work, the bills, and keeping up with the house cleaning. That was probably the biggest adjustment I had to make. I did some of that stuff in my house. I always kept my room clean. Like, that stuff gives me anxiety when it's not clean. But just, kind of doing it here and making sure that it was kept up with, because like we were saying, like you worked some nights, there's no reason that you should have to come home to like dirty dishes or like a messy room, and you just want to sleep and move on to the next day when you're tired from working all night. So that was kind of one thing that I feel like was a kind of big transition. And, the bills come along. I had bills living at home, but, we didn't have a home payment. We didn't have the electric and the things that come with owning a home. And, we got a new car and things like that, and just managing bills and then being able to develop like a life plan together. That was something that we kind of prioritized throughout our first year. We both agreed, we're both really into travel. We'll try and get a trip in a year. Are prioritizing, wanting to move out, a 10-year type of plan or a 5-year plan like that, and things like that. And then, just it's nice to have somebody on the spot to be able to talk to about life's ups and downs. And that's one thing that was really cool about living together. Like we would always talk to each other and be very open with each other, but now we live in the same house, so it's like right here, it's like, we connect more living together than I feel like you would just texting or, talking on the phone at night when you're dating, or even seeing each other. Because like when you're seeing each other when you're dating a couple nights a week, it's like, you want to spend that time with them. You don't want to put all your burdens on someone that 1, 2, 3 nights a week that you're getting able to see them. So being able to live together and, kind of talk to each other and, digress life's difficulties and happiness too together, which is really cool and my favorite part about living together. So how about from your perspective?
So from my perspective, I was like super excited to move in together, obviously, and really ready. And then I would just say biggest transitions for moving in. I like naturally am a person who just doesn't do well with change, even if it's a good thing. I just like don't do the best with change and transition. So I feel like I struggled with it a little bit just because I moved out of the house. That was like the only house I ever lived in growing up. So it's not like I ever even had a move before that I remembered. So that was like a transition, moving out of like my family home. And I also like really enjoyed living with my sister and parents and like chatting in the morning when I get home from work before I went to sleep, or like on my days off. I like enjoyed hanging out with all of them. So I feel like not living at home and getting to see them as much, that was a transition for me. And then unlike if you were working and I was off, I had to really get used to the house being quiet because my mom was always home on, like, she worked part-time and she was home during the day. So I always had someone to talk to. So, and we didn't have a dog yet. So not that he talks back to me, but
with attitude.
So I had to get used to it being quiet. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like talking to my mom, I remember before, and I was like, the house is so quiet when I'm home by myself. So I used to like put on music a lot. I got really into listening to podcasts, even when I was cleaning. So that way,
something
if it just wasn't silence. Other things, I would say like the household responsibilities, even though it's all like coming, it's more of the balancing act of it because you're busy. So like you want to spend time together, you have work, and then you have like just the normal responsibilities. And laundry builds up. That's like a constant,
especially when two of us are working out a day and then like we're taking Red on a walk with dirty clothes and then we want to wear nice clothes.
So that's like, still to now. It's a balancing act.
And there's only two of us.
You get into like a rhythm a little bit better of it, but it's still a balancing act.
Well,
I think those are like my biggest transitions probably. And then we kind of already talked about it, but what things I liked was like being able to create a home together and like our own memories. Which I like really love, and obviously we still do that. And then just having like homemade breakfast, really love on the weekends, like Sunday mornings. I feel like we like make homemade breakfast. Love Dutch babies for breakfast.
Do you think so? I was thinking when you were talking, so we dated for a while, and then we when we got engaged. But even before that, like you were saying that you like living with your parents, and so besides the fact of moving out and living with me, do you think that? Did you feel that same way because you lived at college? Did you feel that same way going to college? And do you think that kind of helped you prepare for us living together and, like, okay, maybe I can make this next step and move out and live with him?
I think it like somewhat helped. I wouldn't say it fully did because I lived away somewhere that was really easy traveling distance. So I still came home every weekend. And then my last year of school, though, I lived home and commuted. So I feel like that got me used to living at home again.
True.
Yeah, but when I was living at school for the first 3 years, it was still like commuter distance, so I didn't feel like it was where I was like at school all the time and only came home for holidays. I was still like, oh, I'm only here until whatever Friday. Like I get to go home, and I worked on the weekends at home. So it helped in a sense of like independence, but it still like wasn't fully the same. I mean, you have like the cleaning and food, but it wasn't like
and you have
like
you
this
living
was
with
like
roommates and getting used to living with somebody besides family,
and like you knew you were going home. This was like moving out and knowing that like I think that was the
really
biggest part, that like
home,
you're not like moving in back
luckily
home.
we live right around the corner from your parents and we see them often. But yeah, I was just wondering that, just like, because like in the beginning I was at the same school as you. We both stayed there, so maybe that made it a little easier. One of your roommates was a friend from high school, so that was really, you knew people there for an extent, until I left, and then I didn't know if like maybe it got harder or something like that. But like you said, it's a week and you got to come home on the weekend, so it's kind of like something to look forward to after a tough week in school and living away.
It almost just felt like you were just like away for a little bit of time and then like went back. I don't know.
Yeah, that routine is just very interesting, I guess, because did you get comfortable on the weekends being home?
Yeah.
And then not want to go back?
I feel like
Monday?
it was. Not that I necessarily didn't want to go back. Like it was exciting to go back. I was excited to like see my friends and everyone and like catch up. But it like it was like kind of nice living home my senior year, I think, because of the frequent going back and forth. I was like constantly packing up clothing and like essentials that I needed. So I felt like it was a lot of like shuffle, honestly, back and forth.
Yeah, and also living home your senior year is probably a good choice just because what you went to school for and everything was probably pretty tough senior year, so it just helped you focus more instead of being around friends and not saying you weren't focused at school, because there were days where you were in the library for hours, but it could help you focus a little more being at home.
Yeah, I feel like I actually had a transition living back home too, because I was used to being at school. I would head right back to like the library or the dorm and just start doing homework or studying right away. I had to get used to then driving back after class and then starting once I got home. Right. Where like sometimes I feel like once I got home, I like wanted to just hang out.
Yeah, true.
And I had to be like, no, I have to lock myself in my room and
get
started.
It's not time to take a break.
Yeah.
Which I guess, that's nice about living at school, because you feel like you're in school mode all week while you're there.
Yeah.
So if you do you have any type of maybe one piece of advice that you would give people who are now engaged, about to get married, moving in together for the first time? Like, do you have any
one piece of advice,
or just some words of wisdom or anything that you would share?
I said to like enjoy each day for what it is. Try not to get like too stressed if you feel like you're at first like not managing everything. And just make that time for each other. And also like if it is your first time moving out, to just keep there's like communication with your family. Make sure you're like
make sure you call your parents once a day, or text them,
like something like that way you don't feel like you moved out and then all of a sudden like you're not communicating with them anymore, and you're like, oh my gosh, I went from like talking to them like multiple times a day living at home to like not speaking to them. Just make sure like keep that up, or visit. And just to add to that, I would say like another little piece of advice, not that you have to do it, but I really enjoyed that we didn't live together while we were dating and engaged, and that we saved that for being married. I think it just made it like even that much more special, because I feel like, not that it's a bad thing, but like some people that you talk to that were living together before they got married, they're like, oh, like not that much really changed. And for us, I feel like it did. So it made it like really exciting. Right. And like a special time, and just like that extra little.
I think that's they make that kind of not the norm, but like they always say, don't live together before you're married. And I think that's mainly because, when you get married and then you move in together, that's like your first obstacle, your first challenge with each other is to, figure out how you're going to operate the home and how you're going to operate the chores and how you're going to manage the bills. So it's like, it adds stressors, but it's something that you both need to talk about and conquer together.
And I feel like that's part of like what a marriage is together. Like you're meant to have those additional little like obstacles together that come with marriage. Yes, I feel like when you're like dating and engaged, that should be like where you don't have those kind of cares,
not that many stressors, like, right? You should be enjoying each other and learning. I mean, we could talk about. I think we have an episode where we talk about like the best friend factor. Which is probably like going to be my favorite, because like I always say, like we were best friends before we were a couple. But those best friends grew while we were a couple, and that's what we focused on more, not living together and becoming best friends and stuff. So I think that really helped, but that will be for another episode as well. My advice would kind of go off of yours, and I would just say, take it slow. There's no reason to rush into everything you want to do in your new home.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, communicate with each other, kind of lay the ground rules per se, or groundwork of what you want that home to look like with each other. And I think that you'll be just fine. So we both would just like to thank you so much for listening. And if you could leave us a review on wherever you're listening by either just tapping on the stars or leaving a written review if you could. Also follow us on Instagram and Twitter for weekly questions that you won't see or hear on this podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.